Hello again. Chase the Traveler with a new episode. So, the topic, the theme, the subject matter is reading and writing Japanese. Why is it so difficult? Reading and writing Japanese. Why is it so frustrating? Reading and writing Japanese. Why people give up. Well, let me tell you. I mean, obviously, when you come to a different country, when you come to a foreign country, and the writing is totally different than what you're used to, that's daunting. The pronunciation, honestly, the pronunciation for me wasn't that difficult. Speaking for me wasn't really that difficult. But reading and writing was definitely very, very, very difficult. And being able to read and write perfectly is extremely difficult. Japanese people, honestly, Japanese kids don't even know how to read and write properly until they're like out of high school. And I'm serious. I'm very serious. So imagine you, me, the foreigner who just got here, or you've been here a couple of years. Are you really going to be able to read and write quickly? Probably not. And there are reasons for that. I mean, reading and writing Japanese is extremely confusing due to the fact that, first, they have 3 different alphabets. Now think about that. Imagine if you had to write something in English, Spanish, French, German, or whatever, and they told you, oh, you know something? We have 3 different alphabets. So you got to learn this alphabet in order to write this. You got to learn this other alphabet in order to write that. And there's another extra super complicated one that you have to learn in order to write other things in order for you to look smart. I mean, it'd be like, what? Why do we have to learn 3 different alphabets? Why can't we just do it with 1 alphabet? Because that's just the way it is. Deal with it. And obviously you're going to have to deal with it. I mean, most Japanese people don't even question why they have 3 alphabets, but you as a foreigner, when you get here, you're going to question it. Well, why do we need it? I mean, we have 26 or 27 letters in English, and we can pretty much write everything or anything. So why make it so complicated? Well, it is. And I'm going to explain. Again, you've got 3 different alphabets. You've got something that they call it hiragana. You've got something else that they call katakana. And then you've got another one that is kanji. That's the most complex one. Now, hiragana is like, wiggly, squiggly lines. They use it with the kanji, which is like a whole bunch of different strokes. So they use it, they use the kanji. I'll show you what I mean. All right. So this is kanji right over here. Right next to it is hiragana, hiragana, hiragana. So over here, you have, this is katakana. It's more geometrical. And then right next to it, you've got kanji, 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 kanji. So you have kanji, that's one type of alphabet. Hiragana, 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 another type of alphabet. Then you've got, again, hiragana, hiragana, one alphabet. This is kanji, that's another type of alphabet. Hiragana, kanji, kanji. And over here, this is like geometrically shaped. Katakana, katakana, hiragana, kanji, kanji, hiragana, kanji, kanji, hiragana. So, you've got This is like a university area. So basically, they have 3 different alphabets working in conjunction with other alphabets. So this is really what makes it extremely difficult to learn Japanese, because you've got katakana, which is basically a type of alphabet that's used when describing foreign things, things that are not domestic to Japan. So for example, a foreign name, Chase, that would have to be written in katakana. A foreign country, that would have to be written in katakana. So hiragana also is for domestic purposes. Now kanji, which is again this is kanji, this is kanji, this is kanji, and this is kanji. It's way more difficult to write. It's got way more strokes. It's got way more strokes. But the people that understand all these kanjis are considered extremely smart, because hiragana and katakana only have about, I think, maybe 40 different characters. Kanji, I think in order to read the newspaper properly, you've got about 3,000 characters. Now, hiragana and katakana kind of like have their own pronunciations, but it's only like this hiragana can be read one way. That katakana can be read one way. You don't have 3 or 4 different pronunciations or 5 different pronunciations. So it makes it a little easier. But the reason people have a problem reading and writing Japanese, and the reason people have a problem with keeping up with it, is because I would say that, I mean, again, I really haven't looked at, I mean, I'd say about 50 to 60% of what you're going to read is probably in kanji, the most difficult part. Maybe 70, depending on what you're reading. So, the problem with kanji, which is, that's kanji, that's kanji, that's kanji, that's kanji, that's kanji, that's kanji. And then over here you have system, which is katakana, because system is English, so they get that from, it's foreign. So they're writing it in katakana. Now the problem with kanji, which is what I just showed you on top right there, right, is that every single one of those characters could have 4 or 5 different ways to pronounce it. So one character, you've got 4 or 5 different pronunciations for it, depending on which character you pair it up with. So, it's extremely difficult to understand. Okay, well, let's say if you have an A and it's paired with a B, you can read it one way. But then you have an A and it's paired with a C, then you have to read it a different way. So, I mean, over here, you've got this character and that character. Now, when this character and this character are together, it's read a certain way. But let's say you take this character right here and you pair it with a different character. Then you might read this a totally different way. So the pronunciation might be totally different. And I mean, over here, this means kabu. This means kopu right there. So, again, this is in katakana because kopu, it's like, it's foreign. So again, that kanji, kabu, probably has like 3 or 4 different meanings depending on what you pair it with. So now imagine having 3,000 characters that you have to use in order to be able to read and write Japanese. But then, not only do you have to understand the character, but those characters can be mixed and matched with other characters, which means you have to learn about maybe 10,000, maybe, I mean, I don't know, about 7,000, 8,000 different combinations. It's tough. It takes years. Having to learn 8,000, 9,000 different combinations. So, are you prepared to do that? Do you have time to do that? I mean, if you're a kid and all you're doing is studying every day, then yeah, you might have time to do that. Especially if you speak Japanese already, then you understand how to do it because you already speak the language, so you don't have to learn the language and the characters at the same time. But if you have to learn the language and you got to learn the characters at the same time, you could be in a pickle. You could be in a pickle. I mean, and also what I know about languages is that when you're learning a language, if you're not using that language on a daily basis, you're going to forget that language. So if you're not reading and writing, I mean, if you're learning how to read and write, and you're not reading and writing every day, you're going to forget how to read and write every day. I know because, I mean, you know, I studied it. I studied how to read and write Japanese, and I think till this, right now, I'm like maybe at 60 to 70%. And the fact of the matter is I'm not using it on a daily basis, so I'm definitely not improving my reading and writing skills. And I'm definitely not getting any better at it because I don't need it, I don't use it, and I get around without being able to read perfectly and write perfectly. Do I recommend that? No. But I do think that speaking Japanese is way more important than writing it for foreigners who do not necessarily need that to work here. You know, this is one thing that I just do not understand about Japanese rich people sometimes. It's like, this is in a very high-end neighborhood right here. This apartment, the person that, not apartment, this house, the person that lives here, is living in a high-end place. But look at that. They have no windows. It looks nice, of course. They're like right next to somebody else. Again, the house that they're right next to isn't like necessarily poor, but look at the windows that they have, and their house is like totally rectangular. But of course, if they tell people that they're in this location, then people automatically give them respect. But then I'm not sure that I want to live in a house that's like, you know, blocked off from the sun. And maybe they have a sky roof. I don't know. But I mean, it just, these are just things about Japan that I just don't understand sometimes. I don't understand it. But like I said, let's get back to the topic. So, reading and writing Japanese is something that is extremely, extremely difficult, especially when you are not using it and you're working in a field where you're not using those characters. You don't need to use it on a daily basis. And it takes years. It's almost like getting a PhD in something. Literally. It's almost like getting a doctorate degree because there's so many things you got to remember. There's so many things you have to know. And I mean, again, I'm not saying that they should change it. I mean, honestly, Chinese could be a little easier, even though, I mean, I shouldn't talk about that because I don't really know. But what I do know is that in Chinese, you have maybe 5,000 characters that they use. I don't think they have 3 or 4 alphabets. And I think that there's only one way to pronounce those characters. I think the Chinese even have a character for Coca-Cola. So, of course, I would say that reading and writing Japanese is on a whole nother level. And learning how to do it properly is something that you really gotta focus on. You really gotta have time to do it. You really have to be dedicated. You have to want to. Because if you don't have time, you're not dedicated, it's not going to happen. Pretty nice looking house going up. This one has the windows, unlike the previous one that I just saw. I mean, I don't know, but I'd say this house right here could be worth like maybe $500,000–600,000. Not sure. But either way, back to the subject. So yeah. So, like I said, reading Japanese, it's like getting a PhD. Reading and writing it. I mean, some people have a situation where they can actually read it, but they don't know how to write it. Imagine that. I'll give you an example. Look at this character right over here and this character right over there. It's got so many strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 strokes to remember that. So some people, they might look at that and say, okay, I know how to read it. But then you ask them to write it, and a lot of Japanese won't even remember how many strokes it is to write, even though they can read it. So imagine that. I don't think a lot of people are going to have that same problem with the Roman alphabet, where people can read it, but they can't write it. Look at this one right over here. I don't even want to count how many strokes, but it's more than 13. I mean, I'm guessing right now. I didn't really count. So this poses a problem for a lot of people, especially if, you know, like I said, there are 3,000 characters. They're not seeing those characters on a regular basis. They're not using those characters on a regular basis. So, are you really up for that? Can you handle that? You are not going to be reading and writing Japanese after studying for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I'm serious. I would say that if you studied every day, I don't think you can do it in 3 years. I seriously, I think your brain would probably just like pop. I think if you did it every day for 4 years, you can probably read and write it well. That could be something that I think, yeah, that's possible. But then if you're an adult and you have a full-time job, where are you going to get the time to do that? I don't think you're going to have the time to do that. But you might. I mean, some people are geniuses. I mean, I don't believe that, but you might. So most certainly, it's a serious challenge. And it's something that very few people can do. Very few foreigners can do it. So when you meet a foreigner out there that tells you that he can read Japanese, yeah, he could probably do it to a certain degree. But then when the topic gets difficult or complicated, he probably can't read it. Because a lot of Japanese people can't read it. I mean, now, if you can't read something, does that mean that you can't get the definition? Of course, you can pull out a dictionary and all of a sudden, voop, 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 and you will understand it. So just because you can't read it doesn't mean you can't pull a dictionary out and then all of a sudden, voila, you now have the definition. That is definitely possible. Most certainly. So, I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm not trying to tell you that it cannot be done. Of course it can be done. I mean, I know foreigners who do read and write Japanese well, who have done it. And yes, it makes life here a little bit easier, especially when you go out to the pharmacy and you're trying to read stuff and you're trying to understand what is going on. Absolutely. It makes life easier. It makes things a little simpler. But you don't really have to be able to read and write here in order to really function. You don't. I mean, I would look at this right here. Now, at my level, if I wanted to read every single thing in there, I'd say right now, just by not thinking and just by like reading, I would say that I would be able to read about maybe 60%. I'd say 60% I'd be able to do it. But if I really set my mind to it, if I wanted to read everything, it would take me probably, a good 15, 20 minutes, 30 at the most to be able to really understand what's going on there. So, do I really want to do that? I'm not sure. But, yeah, that's what it takes. You need to be dedicated. You need to have time. You need to practice on a daily basis. And I mean on a daily basis. Then you're going to be able to read and write. Now, will your life substantially improve because you can read and write Japanese? Maybe yes, maybe no. Will you make more money because of it? Highly doubtful. Because, I mean, again, you had the guy, I mean, he's a fugitive now. I mean, I really don't know if he did what they say he did. Carlos Ghosn. He was the president of Nissan. I know for a fact that he probably spoke Japanese, but I know for a fact that he definitely didn't read and write it 100%. When I say I know, I don't mean that I have personal knowledge of it, just based on the fact that he just popped in. I don't think so. But hey, chase the traveler again. Thank you very much. See you in the next episode.